What is up, guys? It's JT. Welcome back to the Let's Grow podcast. Of course, this is your place for a shot of encouragement, real conversations with real people that we hope at the end of the day simply leave you better than it found you. That's really it. Nothing more, nothing less. We just want to be an encouragement to you. And I have the pleasure and privilege of introducing you to a great friend of mine by the name of Mr. Janos Briscoe. Thanks for hanging out with me today, Janos.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, guys, listen, we go way back. Me and Janos go way back. Janos was actually my teacher's aide before I stepped out of public education. I left public education in like 2011, 2012. Janos, what was your senior year of high school?
2012.
Okay. So that was
Yep.
your senior year. All right. That last year. So man, I've known this young man for a long time. He was a stellar student athlete back in the day, played some baseball at the college level for a few years, and then chose to take the path and the route of law enforcement. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but you're also going to hear a little bit more of his story. So Janos, tell us real quick, man, where do you come from, and where, kind of what's the work that you currently do, and that way people can get to know you a little bit better.
Again, JT, I appreciate you having me. Here from small town Bowling Green, Kentucky. Went to Warnings High School, class of 2012. Go Raiders!
Yes, sir.
After high school, got a chance to play some college baseball at the junior college level and Division I level before a few injuries, and decided that law enforcement was probably a good path for me to go down, as lots of both collegiate and professional athletes. Started in law enforcement full time in 2016 in Gallatin, Tennessee. Started at the Gallatin Police Department, went over to the Sheriff's Office, Sumner County, and I've been with the State Police for right at about 2 years now, the Kentucky State Police. So,
good deal. So, Janos, I'm assuming being with the Kentucky State Police, the expectations there, and the academy on getting in, qualifying, right, meeting the requirements to be accepted in the program, that was pretty strenuous. What was that like?
The process is it's a pretty long process, anywhere from about 8 months or so, give or take a few months during the process to go through background investigations, polygraphs, physical examinations, physical tests. So it's a pretty competitive process. And then along with actually getting hired on and getting your letter stating that you've been selected, going through 24-week, 6-month academy class. It's a pretty good toll mentally, physically, emotionally, that it takes, but it's helped us, or at least helped me, become a better person and a better trooper. So.
Sure. And, not everybody sees challenges that way, Janos. A lot of folks look at challenges, the shift in the comfort level and the inconvenience and the level of difficulty. They allow themselves to get discouraged, get frustrated, and say, man, is the juice really worth the squeeze here? Or versus yourself, kind of looking at things as, man, this is challenging because they are trying to prepare me for a better future. This is challenging. This is difficult because they want to set me up for success. Would you say, Janos, that sports, some of those ups and downs, some of those injuries, some of those dreams and hopes and aspirations that you had, some things going well, some things not going well, would you say that helped prepare you, to be the man that you are today and kind of do the work that you do and see things the way you see it?
Big time. I encourage everybody, sports may not be your thing, but if you get in sports, I say it's a great prepare for life. Because like you said, you have injuries, you got guys or myself, that you don't immediately have playing time, and you've got to work and you've got to fight for those opportunities. And that's essentially life. Life's not going to be fair, and it's not going to hand you everything that you have. So therefore you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to grit. You're going to get hit in the face. You're going to bounce back up. You're going to have to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing until you can get to those things that you really want. So, yeah.
Totally. And guys, I saw Janos as an athlete back in the day. I saw the passion that he had on the baseball diamond, the focus that he had. as an athlete, but more so than just being an athlete, the young man that he was becoming. And I want to, I don't want to blow his head up too big, but I want you all to know that one of the reasons why I appreciate, and one of the reasons why I think I still have such a great relationship with this young man is because I can remember back in the day, the level of respect that he had for people, his peers, his teachers, his coaches, people in the community. Obviously he knows that he's not perfect. We know that he's not perfect. Nobody is. But I bet you'd be hard pressed to find somebody to say something really ugly about Janos Briscoe, because he made treating people with respect, a staple in his daily life. And I could see that at an early age. And, this is a quick plug on women in dating. If you want to find a good guy, you find a guy who treats their mom the way that Janos Briscoe treats his mom. And man, you will have found a guy who's going to love you and serve you well. So just had to make that quick plug, Janos. I know you're probably blushing. But we can't tell, right? We can't tell. Oh man, I didn't mean to turn this into Match.com. So either way, but you mentioned it a few minutes ago. I'm going to back up real quick about Kentucky State Police and the program and the polygraph and the strenuous stuff to meet the qualifications to be accepted into the academy. And I remember one of my best friends back in the day, he was going through the academy, honestly was getting ready to close things down, and he had an injury that kicked him out of the program. I can't remember if it was a knee injury or a shoulder injury. But basically, I mean, he had hit every qualification, at the highest level that he possibly could. And it was kind of one of those things where when he had to bow out, the agency kind of, spoke with him and said, hey, listen, if you ever decide to apply again, just know we would love to have you, because of an unfortunate thing that kind of went south. But I remember getting a phone call from one of the detectives during the interview process, because I was one of his references. And I was like, I remember getting a voicemail. Hey, this is such and such with detective such and such with Kentucky State Police. Bro, I was like, I'm not calling that cat back. Man, I'm not calling that dude back. I don't know what I was questioning every single choice I've made. Since I can remember, I was like, man, why is this dude calling me? Oh my God. And I think he even said, in reference to Curtis Parson, who's applying for the Kentucky State Police. But I was like, man, I still ain't calling a cat back. But then I was like, man, if I don't, then what's that say about Curtis being his best friend? So I was like, all right, I'm going to chalk it up. I'm going to call this dude back. I'm going to answer his questions to the best of my ability. And then as soon as we got off the phone, I was like, Kurt, hey, just call back the detective from KSP. This is what I told him. What did you tell him? he was like, I think I pretty much said about the same thing you did. So I think it's pretty much spot on. I was like, oh man.
That detective's watching this right now.
Probably tapping in right now.
Absolutely.
So man, I'm telling you, I was sweating whenever I got that voicemail. But so Janos, tell me about, why law enforcement? Because and I think we can take the conversation here in just a few minutes, but based on the nature of the world that we're living in, some of the, I guess you'd say, the uphill struggles that police officers face, law enforcement face, because of the scrutiny, right, of who they are, what they do, upholding, their call to do the work that they do to serve and protect versus abusing that authority, right? I think the average person would say, man, why would anybody want to become a police officer, right, in today's society? So tell me about that dream and that career path. Why do you feel like that's something that you wanted to do? Why are you so passionate about this work?
I think I've always, just from being a little kid, always wanted to go into law enforcement. When I started reserve police officer work in 2014, I guess the environment wasn't as heavily magnified then as it is now.
Yeah.
So it was a little easier to get in the work and actually enjoy it. And not saying that I don't enjoy it now, but it was a whole lot easier several years ago to really get in it and dive deep and really say, hey, this is what I want to do for the next X amount of years of my life.
Sure.
But even more so now, I still enjoy law enforcement. I still enjoy the work, and I tell some of the guys that I work with now that you really see who's in it for the right reasons.
Totally.
Because number one, the pay isn't extremely great, but number two, the scrutiny of law enforcement in general, and everything else that's going on in law enforcement right now, it's really hard, I guess, personally, spiritually, to continue just every single day of getting up and putting on the uniform and be like, hey, there's another day that somebody wants to record me and say bad things about me or whatever
Sure.
the case may be for that day. But I guess I look at it in the sense of if somebody has one interaction with law enforcement and with the state police, predominantly, one interaction in their entire life, and it's with me, I hope that experience is nothing but pleasure, whether, they have to get a citation or they get off, with a verbal warning, or even if they have to go to jail. I want that interaction to be the most pleasurable they have ever had before, so that when somebody on social media or a friend or a family member says, all these cops are corrupt and bad, they can speak up and they can be just an extension of our voice,
Sure.
to say, hey, man, not all these cops out here are terrible people. They've got a job to do just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I will, there are some bad apples in our profession. I can't not say that. There are
Sure.
there are some bad apples in our profession, but the vast majority of us are in it for the right reasons. Like I said, we enjoy what we do. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the role where I'm at, the agency that I'm employed by, to not only interact with people locally, but I have an opportunity to travel across the state, and have interactions with the people of the Commonwealth, and I think that's a really neat thing for me. So
Totally. And I heard you mention in there in that response, Janos, you mentioned spiritually, and based on what I know about you, I would venture to say that it's safe for our listeners to know that you see your work as a way of worship, that this is your way of giving back to the loving God who's given you an opportunity to do this work, right? Who's given you life, who's given you influence, who's given you health, right?
absolutely.
So, when you think about making a difference in the work that you do, right? This isn't just a paycheck. This isn't just putting on a badge and getting in a patrol car and having a power trip. This isn't just about being employed by an agency because of a good retirement package per se. This is work that fulfills me, and this is my way of making a difference. Janos, are there any situations that stand out? I know there's a lot of confidentiality that comes with the work that you do, but are there any situations that stand out to you in particular where you got home from a shift and said, you know what, I feel good about the work that I put in today, and I know that I was proactive about making a positive difference in this work, especially in a time where people see, like you said, the scrutiny of police officers. Are any particular situations stand out to you that make you feel good about the work that you're able to do?
And I could say these instances happen at least once a week where you get to interact with teenagers, juveniles, because they're essentially going to be running this country, the Commonwealth, in the next 15 to 20 years. So any interaction that I can have with somebody of the teenager years or even juveniles is a really good day for me, and I can go home and say, I made a positive difference. I think in one person that's going to be beneficial to society in 10 years. Whenever I start having kids, I won't have to worry that, what path are we going to go down because of my one interaction with the juvenile, with the teenager. So if I had to, pinpoint any given time, it's just during all this COVID and everything that's going on. Just getting out and shooting basketball with some kids. I'm not the greatest athlete, but I'm still an athlete, and they didn't beat me for all of the listeners. But just getting out and playing basketball and showing them, hey man, he just got out of a trooper car and he's still got a uniform on. But at the end of the day, like he's a person. And as I'm leaving, going to a call, I had parents and even the kids come out, hey man, we appreciate you really just coming out and showing us that everybody that wears a badge isn't here for the wrong reasons. So that's a pretty good feeling for me.
Yeah, I was at an elementary school in Owensboro a few weeks back. I'm actually heading back to Owensboro this week to speak at another elementary school. But when I went there a couple weeks back, the school resource officer in that district was scheduled to speak before me that day. Well, it just so happens that there was a call that he had to take, and sad but true, because of this particular part of town, there was a shooting that took place, and some people were injured, and so that SRO had to respond to that call, which didn't allow him to be at school that day. But the purpose of him being there that day is the school wanted to get ahead of the game, because they realized that a lot of these kids, especially, let's just call it like it is, because you understand the demographic of people in different areas and the psychology and the nature of the work that you do, and having to approach people differently because of being sensitive to maybe situations that people have been in because of what they look like or where they live. And in this particular low income area, a lot of these kids, all they see are law enforcement officers showing up at their house to take things away from them, right? To take people away from them, right? To having to police them all the time. And that's disheartening. And so they want to make a conscious effort in that particular school district to let these kids know that this is not what we're here for. We are here to serve you, to love you, to help protect you. Sad but true, that calls us to have to, deal with certain situations in a particular way, but we don't ever want you to think that our goal, right, is to hurt you. Right. So I thought that was very admirable on the school's part, because whenever those kids transitioned from that elementary school to that middle school, they were going to be seeing that school resource officer. Mm-hmm. So they wanted them to get to know him. Right. And so just like you're talking about, man, being visible, giving people a different reference point, giving people a different perception and idea of what a police officer is and what they're here to do. And it's not designed to hurt you. Right. So I appreciate you, Janos, being one of those guys, especially an African-American male in such a hostile time in our country. Right. Representing what it looks like to be a law enforcement officer and doing that honorably and doing that with class, with character, integrity. And to segue with that, obviously we're living in a very interesting time in human history. The last 18, 24 months inside of our country has been, chaos. There's been a lot of confusion. There's been a lot of people, especially if they're not anchored in the hope of Jesus Christ, who are operating out of fear, right? Who are operating out of a scarcity mindset. What's going to happen? And then you have things being amplified through social media, right? Whether it be police brutality or social justice, all of these different conversations, everything is politicized, right? So how have you, Janos, as a son, as a man, as a law enforcement officer, how have you protected your peace, and how have you stayed positive in the midst of all this? Or anything particular you've done?
Again, we talked about it, first and foremost, spiritually, just find some quiet time every single day to decompress. I don't like finding myself, quote unquote, complaining. But there's always time just to decompress, to stay by myself and try to figure out what, I guess not necessarily why, but just the root cause of everything that's happening. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, I would say spending time with family just to kind of
Yeah.
get my mind off of things all the time. This
Yeah.
job is pretty stressful when we're out in public. So the second that I can get home and shed a uniform and go out, spend some time with family or friends, that's a really good, just a refreshing atmosphere that puts me in a better mood per se. And then lastly is, I would say, is just being involved in baseball, whether it be coaching, giving lessons, going out, watching games, just things of that nature. That's a really good stress relief for me is just being around the game that I've always loved to play and just being there. I can't play it. So the best way to do for me anyway is try to get out and coach it. Just the little bit of knowledge that I have. So.
Yeah. So so based on trying to stay active with the game, coaching, playing, going and hitting a few balls, doing a few things, watching some, what's, obviously you still love the game of baseball dearly. So based on what the current playoffs are looking like, who do you think's going to take the title?
I'm going to have to go with the Braves.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with the Braves. I just have a weird feeling Braves are going to pull it off.
Yeah, I actually, growing up here in Kentucky, obviously, that we don't have a lot of teams that are like super close. But, I grew up around a lot of Braves fans. Of course, there's a lot of Reds fans and a lot of Cubs. I feel like there's a lot of Braves, Reds, and Cubs fans where I come from. And I was thinking last night, like if I had the ideal sports vacation, since I grew up a Bulls and a Bears fan, I would love for the Cubs or the White Sox, since they're both in Chicago. Okay. I would love for them to be playing in the playoffs right now and to travel to Chicago for a weekend and catch a Bulls, White Sox or Cubs game and a Bears game all in the same weekend. So NBA is like tipping off right now. So you could catch like an NBA game on a Thursday or Friday, maybe catch, the major league playoffs, one of the Chicago teams on a Saturday, and then a Bears football game on a Sunday. Talk about a killer weekend.
That would be pretty awesome. That's a sports fanatic dream right there. That'd be pretty neat. Yeah.
Totally. Hey, I heard you say family a second ago, Janos. You said something that's kind of helped me stay grounded, helped me keep my peace, helped me stay positive, is getting away from the work I do or kind of shutting the world out on social media and just spending time with people who matter the most to me. I know, when I saw you growing up, your mom and your grandfather were they played a very important role in your life. And I saw recently you gave your grandfather a shout out on social media for a birthday. And called him the GOAT, right? Greatest of all time, which he is, because I saw that guy show up for you every time something was going on that was school sanctioned. So tell me about that relationship with your grandfather and why it's so important to you, Janos, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I guess he was the first father figure I really had. I always grew up around him, of course, single mom, so I guess he was that father figure to me. He taught me, that we're not gonna stay inside and play video games all day. That we're gonna get out. We're gonna go to school. We're gonna get our homework done, and then before you get to go play video games and go sit in the house, we got yard work to do. We got to do this. We got to do that. So,
Janos, we could stop the broadcast right there and just mic drop and say, if you get nothing else from our conversation, you need to go to a certain minute, certain second where Janos starts talking about his grandfather's expectations, and you need to replay that over and over, and you need to apply that in the home. That's good stuff right there. I didn't mean to interject, man, but I had to share that because that's good stuff. That has a lot to do with the man that you are today. But go ahead.
So that stabilization, he instilled in my mom. They both instilled in me and my brother that there's always time to play, but before play, there's always work needed to be done. And you've got to have things lined out so things are taken care of before you get to go have that fun. And so he also really, we'll just put it this way: when discipline was needed, it was given without any hesitation whatsoever. So we'll put it that way. I don't want anybody to come try to say there was some child assault. This and it's probably borderline child assault, absolutely. But when discipline was needed, both by my grandfather and by my mother, there was zero hesitation as far as making sure that happened. So
and you knew why, and you knew that it was because this is the way we're going to do things.
Correct.
And there's a difference in discipline, a discipline just because of exercising authority and power versus a discipline that says, we are going to make sure that, this is why we're disciplining you, because we love you. And these are the expectations we have for you as a young man. And that's a big deal, man. And the fact that he was present in your life, and I know that you don't mind me sharing this, and obviously you don't have to go into detail, but you being raised by a single mom, Janos, him being there was a big deal whenever your father wasn't present at the time. Correct. And what would you say? Would there be any piece of advice that you could give anyone who's listening to this broadcast, maybe a single mom that's listening right now, who maybe is thinking, is there hope? Or maybe a young man who is growing up in the same situation that you were in, without a parent who was present. What's some encouragement that you could give them, Janos?
I guess for the single mom, just say keep pushing. Not everybody's always, even family, friends, they're not always going to be in your corner. But as a single mom, you're doing it for that sole purpose of that child. So just keep pushing. The seed that you sow at an early age is definitely going to just bloom out to be the biggest, most beautiful tree that you have ever planted in your entire life. So just continue down the path that you believe is right for your child. Because I appreciate it more than my mom will ever know. She'll never know how much I appreciate her. Just the countless hours, multiple jobs, so that I could do what I wanted, i.e. play baseball. And I even knew that when she wasn't there, sometimes it was because she was going out and doing everything she could to make sure that I could be where I wanted to be. I would say for that child that's being raised by a single parent, mother or father, don't look at it as, I guess you could say that for a while, at a younger age, I kind of thought, why was I not good enough for my father?
Sure.
And just through time, and I mean, I'm still a kid, but at 27, I'm starting to realize that it's not my loss; it's their loss. And I plan to make sure that everything that I do from then until now, till infinity, that I make sure that I do it to the best. Not to say, hey, look at me, but to say, I should have been there, or that could be the relationship that I've always wanted. So for that child, just to keep on pressing. Don't look at it as, why was I not good enough, but really just sit down and just kind of realize that it's for a purpose. That purpose is always unknown initially, especially at a younger age. But as you continue to mature and develop and grow, that it was probably for the best, maybe not even for you, but for that person. So just continue to continue to press, continue to move, and just know that it's not their loss, it's not your loss, it's their loss. So
and I'm sure throughout the years you've had countless questions. There's things you wanted to know. There's things that you wanted to be at peace about. And I'm sure as you continue to grow and develop, and whatever may come, from that that healing process, or, finding a place where, potentially common ground, because I've seen over the years, there are some efforts there, and you and I've had a couple of conversations in that regard, not to go into too much detail, but we don't have to look far to see, Janus, that a lot of the work that you do as a law enforcement officer, and a lot of the issues that plague society are a byproduct of fatherlessness in our communities. That statistics and research has proven time and time again that the larger percentage of people who are incarcerated, you can look back and see that typically there's some fatherlessness involved there, right?
Correct.
It's a sad reality. I think it speaks to the nature of creation and the way this thing is set up. And it says how much how important a father really is, right? So
Correct.
for you, Janus, do you think there's any underlying motivation, based on kind of, your personal situation and the work that you do? Do you think there's any kind of underlying motivation there for you to be in the field that you're in your
Um,
situation?
Absolutely. Like you said, there's, and there's not statistics to back up what I'm about to say, but the majority of juvenile teenagers that we encounter, uh, are somewhat troubled, I guess, in a sense. And like you said, most of them are living in single parent households. So I can always, excuse me, I can always relate to that, relate
Yeah.
to them, and kind of build that bridge, that barrier, or break that barrier that
Yeah.
that a lot of people that they don't necessarily have. Um, and I've done that numerous times in my profession, and you can see, once you start having that conversation with juvenile, with the teenager, of, hey man, I grew up without my dad as well. You can just kind of tell that they essentially just kind of float to you, because you can relate, they can relate to you, and that's a big part of this profession, is just being relatable.
Sure.
Just because I've got a badge and a uniform on, doesn't mean that I'm still not a person.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
especially when juveniles, teenagers, early adulthood, just because I'm in that role and they're in their situation, doesn't mean that I can't relate to them. I can't be a person just like they are. So whenever you
Totally.
kind of break that barrier, it's you can really start to see how communication and how things go over so well, once you kind of, you know I guess, more or less just show emotion,
Yeah.
in that sense.
With the national conversation being what it's been, and a lot of the things being highlighted that have been highlighted on social media, and things being amplified and politicized, some things rightfully so, some things not so much, right? I think every situation deserves its own separate conversation, that
Correct.
everything isn't a blanket scenario. There's nuance to a lot of things that take place, and each situation is a little different. So that's what disheartens me so much, is to see people pushed back into these categories and lumped into a system or a group of people, and saying, well, this is what the world should think about you. And of course, we know that that's not true. So, Janus, I mean, just be candid with me. Like, how does it feel to be a young man, a man of color in your profession? Like, how has that felt over the past little bit for you?
It's been a little sketchy. I find myself at times walking down the line right there in the middle of, law enforcement, being a black male in society. You know, this side's telling me one thing, more or less. This side's telling me another thing. What side am I going to choose? And I just come to the conclusion that, if we take race out of it first and foremost, that oh, here we go. If race is taken out of things, predominantly, I think that's going to stop a whole lot of the issue. You know, I've been approached by both sides, and you know, whose team are you on? I'm not on a team. I'm here to do what I know spiritually that I'm supposed to do. And I think we talked about this before we actually started the podcast. You know, that I have a job to do, and I'm going to do that job regardless if you're white, if you're black, if you're Hispanic. That's just, you know, at the end of the day, if there's a job that needs to be done, I'm going to do that job. But at the same time, I'm not going to step overboard because somebody is a specific race. That's sure. Just, you know, I wasn't really raised on, you know, that person's white, that person's black. You know, it's a person, and you know, there's right and wrong. And for me, if I do wrong, I expect to be treated accordingly, not because I'm a black male, because I'm a person that did something wrong.
Simply held accountable. Yeah.
Correct. So I think the accountability portion is a big big highlighted area on both sides,
Sure.
to make sure us in the law enforcement world that we hold each other accountable, and make sure that, you know, we're doing things you know, both morally, ethically correct, but at the same time, being a black male, I need to hold other black men, other black women accountable as well.
Sure.
Again, not just because, you know, there's a black cop and a white guy, or a white guy and black cop. It's just right and wrong. And I think that's the biggest issue, is the accountability thing on both sides. So.
Sure. And I think also, Janos, with this conversation, I think people have opinions about certain things and certain issues who probably shouldn't have such a strong opinion about that particular issue. You know, I heard a quote not long ago said a great way to ruin your day is to have a strong opinion about nothing you probably know anything about. And
that's correct.
Man, that's incredible, because it's one thing to have an opinion. It's another thing to allow that opinion to drive how you are treating people in response to maybe something that you don't like, right? So we all have opinions, but if I have an opinion that disagrees with your opinion, then to allow that to determine how I treat you as a person, now we're going to a place that's very unhealthy, right? Because we can disagree and still love one another. Like you said, I can be a black male and I can be a police officer, and I don't have to quote unquote choose sides, right? I don't have to pick a side. I can agree with two ideas at the same time. That doesn't necessarily mean that I have to choose a side, that if I believe this, then I'm an enemy of that, or I'm opposed to that. I want to be a person who upholds my faith and my spirituality as the ultimate deciding factor in how I live my life. So yeah, it's really sketchy. It's really hairy. I'm sure that you've had a hard time processing a lot of it. But at the same time, I know that where you're anchored at, that's helping you continue to do the job that you feel called to do, like you said, for the right reasons and with the right motivation. Jay, before we close down, man, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but before we close down, I had this book passed to me by the chief of police here locally where I live, Chief William Hunt, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, by Kevin Gilmartin. Obviously, you remember I sent this book to you, but I'm highlighting this because this was passed to me before I did a leadership and personal growth and development training with the local police department in my home, in my town, not my hometown, but the town that I live in now. And it provided great insight, great perspective. And I just love that focus that Chief Hunt has with his department of, I want to prepare people, or I want to help people be proactive about developing their mindset, right? Taking care of their body, taking care of their mental health, taking care of their relationships, right? Of taking care of their spiritual health, so that we aren't playing damage control
Correct.
which is what happens for a lot of law enforcement
Correct.
officers. Janos, what have you seen in the line of work that you do where people begin to struggle, or what are kind of the expectations of like kind of getting to that place where you're checked out and the hypervigilance kind of begins to really take over? You know, what does that kind of look like in law enforcement?
Um, they say that, you know, the average person, and I'm sure my numbers are slightly off, the average person responds or is involved in 3 to 5 to 7 critical incidences in their life, whether it be death, vehicle accidents, things of that nature.
Yeah.
I can say easily, without a doubt, and again, there are numbers on it that I don't have, but that law enforcement every single day, if not multiple times a day in a shift, that we are involved in some kind of critical incident. Whether that, you know, you're responding to a juvenile that's hurt or a death, a shooting, things of that nature. It's multiple times a shift, and you know, we go to those, and then we kind of have a little break, and then boom, blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, your mind starts going again. You go deal with that situation, that critical incident, and then, you know, you've kind of everything kind of levels back out, and then before we know it again, our levels are back up. So the biggest thing I think, and it's touched on in that book, the mental health side of things for law enforcement. Law enforcement go through multiple marriages in their career, unfortunately, just due to the unforeseen circumstances of the job, predominantly the mental aspect of the job. So I think that's the biggest barrier as law enforcement that we fight, is that mental fortitude to continue to drive, continue to go. At the same time, trying to find those refreshing points that we just need to, hey, decompress and just kind of let everything just let everything go. We don't do, and I think it's just men in general, but especially men in law enforcement capacities. You know, we're the ones that we're always called on, so we have to be on our A game 100% of the time, or it's expected for us to be there at 100% of the time, and we don't do a good job of talking about our feelings, saying what's on our minds, things of that nature, because, you know, we're always on the go, and I don't want to look weak, number one, when I'm in society and in my uniform and my capacity, but at the same time, I don't want to look weak around my family, just because, again, that's just how we're wired. So the mental side of things for law enforcement is the big issue that needs to be worked on. You know, there's a mental health crisis, not only in the general world, general population, but there's a mental health crisis in law enforcement that quite frankly nobody wants to speak out on, because we're not going to do it, because, you know, hey, we're those guys that we're going, and I don't think that whole. I think there are lots of people that can relate to what, you know, we go through on a daily basis as far as the mental aspect goes. But I think until you you're in this job for a little while and you realize, holy crap, like it's there, and it's not being treated, that, you know, it can't be fully disclosed. And like I said, we're not gonna go out on the limb and say, hey, I need help. That's just not what we do. So we're the helpers, and we don't need help. So.
And but to hear someone like yourself recognize that, understand that, you know, does that give you an opportunity to encourage other young guys coming in, you know, of, hey, listen, here's some things you need to be aware of. Here's some, you know, is there a piece of advice that was given to you as a law enforcement official that kind of stands out to you? Also, what's one piece of advice you would give to somebody maybe coming in?
So at the State Police Academy, they essentially initiated like a mental health program,
Yeah.
not only for law enforcement. It's more towards the general public. So we, as law enforcement, we're able to identify the mental health crisis when we're dealing with anybody, for that matter. But to go along with it, there are programs, at least in our state agency, that are there for us if we need to go talk to people. So I guess my advice, and I should probably take my own advice as well, but for somebody that's growing in law enforcement, that's getting in law enforcement, heck, that's somebody that has 25 years on, longer than I've been alive, I would say don't be afraid to go get help. I think that's the biggest, that would be the biggest hurdle for us in law enforcement to do, is say, hey, I need help. And I would just say, don't be afraid to go get help. It's not any more or less, you're not any more or less of a man because you need to go get help. I think I would say you're more of a man because you actually stepped up and said, hey, I'm broken. I need help.
Yeah. So. Totally. I appreciate you sharing that, Jay. What would you say, you talking about mental health, you've mentioned spending time with people, spending time with family, people who you care about, kind of helping you stay refreshed, stay encouraged. And I remember speaking to a gentleman who's on the local police department here. And I said, what's one thing that you feel like you learned early in the game that's really helped you, stay on top of, your health and being proactive and not allowing the profession to put you, not allowing you to become jaded, right? And because you see the worst in people a lot of times through the work that you're doing. So then it shifts how you see people, how you see the world. I said, what's helped you combat that? He said, man, relationships, making sure that I surround myself with good people, making sure that I'm spending time with people who genuinely care about me as a person, not just as a cop, making
Correct.
sure I am in conversation with people and letting people know how they can help me, finding out how I can serve them, allowing myself to remember that I'm not just a cop, right?
Right.
So, I know that you believe in a lot of those things, but also I see you as a young man who's taking care of yourself. Like, what does staying in shape and working on your physical health, what does that mean to you, Janos? And becoming the person that you want to become, the law enforcement official that you want to become, just, being a good steward of your health.
This job is extremely physical. At any point, you could be sitting in your car driving on the road. The next point, you could be running and jumping and fighting and things of that nature. But I guess I go a little bit beyond that. People are depending on me to help their family. And I'm depending on myself to help my own family. So if I'm not in at least top physical shape that I should be in, I'm doing not only your family, but my family a disservice.
That's good.
And I try to surround myself with guys that I work with that, hey, we're going to the gym. We need to go get this done. We need to go get that done. Because if that guy can't save my family, I'm going to have an issue with it. So if I can't go out and save somebody else's family, then I expect somebody to have an issue with it. Whether, it's trying to go in a burning house and pull somebody out, or somebody that's been shot. One of my coworkers have been shot, to drag them to safety. Or if somebody's even having a medical emergency, to get them out of a car or out of an awkward position or situation and drag them to safety. If I can't be at the top physical shape that I can to go serve them in that role, then honestly, I shouldn't, nor anybody in this profession should be doing that job.
That's good. Yeah. That's and that's not being harsh or calling anybody out. That's just honoring the fact that this work requires that.
Correct.
And so if I'm not in a position where I can fulfill those duties or, do things of that nature, then ultimately I'm not going to be able to serve at my best. And man, that transcends work. That's applicable to life.
Correct.
Putting ourselves in the best position mentally, physically, spiritually, relationally, to serve people at our highest capacity. That doesn't mean we're always going to get it right. That doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we're not going to have letdowns and make mistakes. But at the end of the day, working to become the preferred best version of ourselves, so to speak, to do the best work that I can. And that
Correct.
not being because we're making self-development and physical development a god. It's because we're working from the fact of, I get to do this. This is a blessing, and I should take care of myself.
Correct. I agree.
So Janos, as we work to close down, man, any particular thing on your mind, on your heart, in your profession, or anything you want to share with our audience before we close down? I know that through the questions that we've had, the different directions we've gone in, mental health, we've talked about, family life, challenges that you've overcome, just, your upbringing. I know some people are going to be blessed by this conversation, but there's anything about who you are, the profession that you're in, that you want to share with our listeners before we close down?
In the law enforcement aspect, just don't place everybody in the same bubble of being bad. There's social media and the news and they're showing you the 5% of us that shouldn't be in law enforcement, that I agree should never ever wear a badge, carry a gun, be in a uniform, be in an enforcement type role.
Totally.
That's the 5% that everybody is seeing. And they're not seeing the 95% of us that are actually out trying to do this job for the right reason. So I wouldn't say, I would hope that, people don't categorize us as just one whole lump of, these guys are all corrupt, they're out to do bad things, everybody's getting a ticket, things of that nature. I would hope for the general society to realize that. But at the same time, any law enforcement that's working, I would just say that not everybody's bad, that we need to be relatable as well. And at the end of the day, we are out to serve. Not everybody needs to go to jail. Not everybody needs a ticket. Sometimes somebody just needs to say, hey man, I'm praying for you, or what can I do to help you? Because not a lot of people in our role say that to people. What can I do to help you? So those two aspects. And I guess I would just I leave with two little, I wouldn't say quotes, but first and foremost, somebody always told me, never forget where you come from. I don't care where life takes you, if you're the president of the United States or if I'm the top law enforcement official in the world, just never forget where I'm coming from. And that's Bowling Green, Kentucky, out in the Warren East Raider community. And the second thing is, people don't know how much you care until they care how much you know. So that's excuse me, I got that backwards, didn't I? People don't. Yeah. So
don't care how much you know until they know
how much you care. Yeah. So that came from JT himself, and that's written in my car. Those two are written. I've got Post-it notes in my car, and every time I get in and out of that car, I see those two quotes. Sure. Every single time I get in and out of my car, which is 5, 6, 7 times a week. So that's about it. I just want to say I appreciate you having me, and if I can do anything for you, as always, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if I can do anything for anybody else, you know how to get in contact with me. So,
well, Janos, man, I think it goes without having to be said that I am extremely proud of you. I've always looked at you as, as a young man who was I see you as that student athlete when I was a teacher, but our relationship has developed, so much over time into a friendship, not more of a mentorship role, teacher coach role, but as a friend, man. And I'm extremely proud of you. I appreciate everything that you stand for. I appreciate the focus, the purpose, and the mission that you bring to the work that you do, because without question, you are one of the guys who is using your platform to make a difference, doing your work for the right reasons with the right motivation. First and foremost, trying to honor God, trying to, be an upstanding citizen, make your mom and your grandfather proud, right? And to just simply be the person in your community that, be the difference in your community that you want to see. So, man, I appreciate it so much, Janos. You shared some great nuggets. Guys, I made this book plug. I really think if you want to understand a little bit more of what law enforcement officials go through and grow through, I think every person should read this book personally, especially if you have found yourself making comments in this national conversation on social media about things. That this kind of provides some insight on some things. Doesn't mean that this book makes excuses for poor choices that cops make, but it helps you understand a little bit about the profession. And I think it's great. So, Janos, man, as I always say when I close down, don't just go through life, grow through life. Everybody can encourage somebody. And man, thanks again for your time.
Hey, thanks, JT. I appreciate you. Love you, brother.
Love you too.